Welcome to part 6. In this section, we will be discussing tropical systems, how to send reports to the National Weather Service, and COCORAS. COCORAS is a citizen scientist program that is nationwide and allows anyone without any prior background, no prior training, you can become a weather spotter where you send in your rain and snow reports from rain gauges and snow equipment that you can set up in your own backyard. So let's get started. So with this section, we're going to begin with tropical. So the chart shown on the right-hand side of the screen gives a list of the names that will be used to title tropical systems during the upcoming 2025 hurricane season. So any tropical system, when it becomes a tropical storm, the first level, it will be given, the first name is Andrea, then Barry, and then so on. So these are the names that will be used for the upcoming season. In tropical systems that impact the Northeast, our primary hazards that we have to be monitoring, first is heavy rain. We can get quite a bit of heavy rain from any kind of tropical system, and that can result in flooding, especially if we are already wet. What that means is if the antecedent conditions, meaning if the ground is already saturated, then we have tropical systems impacting the Northeast, that just sets up the disaster for flooding. So really with tropical systems, one of the primary hazards that we have to monitor is flooding, and that is both river flooding and flash flooding. Probably many of you can recall not too long ago when we've been impacted by remnants of tropical systems or even weakening tropical systems, and we've received quite a bit of flooding. Some of the most notable names of tropical systems that we've experienced here in the Northeast include Ida, which happened in 2021. That was the one that really impacted the New York City area. Isaias, that actually led to quite impressive wind gusts, especially in the Taconics and in the Berkshires and Litchfield County. So Western New England experienced quite impressive wind gusts. And then, of course, many of us remember Tropical Storm Irene from 2011. So something that's relatively new. So traditionally, when we issue any kind of hurricane warning, tropical storm warning, those kinds of products, they traditionally have always been for more coastal locations. So here in upstate New York and parts of Western New England, we're farther inland, but because of the impacts that many of us have experienced from Irene and other notable tropical systems, there was a policy change. And now, even here in upstate New York and Western New England, we can now issue tropical headlines. What that means is we can now issue tropical storm warnings, tropical storm watch, hurricane warning, hurricane watch, if conditions are favorable and if we need to get the message out that high impacts are expected. Even if it's not technically a hurricane or technically a tropical storm, but it's still presenting very impactful hazards, we want to use those products, hurricane warning, tropical storm warning, to get the message out to the public that these impacts are coming and are expected, and what you would need to do to prepare to make sure that you and your loved ones stay safe and that your property stays safe. So something new this year, well, past couple years, that we can now issue tropical headlines inland. And this includes actually up into Vermont and going west into the Binghamton area. So you can see all those areas highlighted in green. Those are the areas that are allowed to issue tropical headlines. Areas in white, those areas those National Weather Service offices do not have the ability to issue any kind of tropical products. So here's a look back at some of the more notable systems that have impacted the Northeast. So first is Ida. This happened September 1st through 2nd, 2021. This is the one where there was a lot of flash flooding, actually a couple of tornadoes, in fact, that impacted parts of New Jersey and the New York City area. Even here in upstate New York, actually parts of the Mid-Hudson Valley and Litchfield County, they experienced very notable flooding. Rainfall amounts, as shown on the graph on the left, they reached 4 to even 5 inches of rain. So needless to say, that led to numerous flooding reports, river flooding as well. And then you actually can notice there was a sharp north to west gradient where rainfall amounts decreased as we headed into the Capital District and even more so heading into the Adirondack. So this was an interesting event that the highest amounts were confined to areas south of Interstate 90. But again, flooding was the main impact from Ida. Then we had another storm, Isaias, that happened in 2020. If you remember, it was during COVID. This one actually was interesting because the way the storm tracked, it actually tracked from north to south. It tracked from south to north. And what happened is it went up the East Coast. And actually, it went right into New England. And because the storm center went through New England and we were actually positioned on the west side of the cyclone, that actually meant that part of our our county warning area, when I say CWA, it's county warning area, part of the region actually experienced very heavy rain. You can see on this rainfall map here, areas in the orange and red colors, those areas experienced quite a bit of rainfall. However, areas in western New England and the Taconics, those areas actually experienced notable wind gusts and strong wind gusts that led to downed trees, power lines, power outages. So because of how the storm tracked from south to north, the way the system is oriented when it comes to tropical systems, normally if you are on the west side of a tropical system or even a hurricane, tropical storm, what have you, you normally experience more heavy rain impacts. If you are on the east side of the storm, then you actually experience strong wind gusts. So it's kind of split. Again, if you're on the west side of the storm, heavy rain. If you're on the east side, traditionally you see strong wind gusts. So you have different hazards. You're either going to have a lot of flooding or more on the wind impacts. So with these ideas, our CWA, our county warning area, the counties that we serve, actually was kind of split with the impact. So areas, the Taconics, West New England, more wind, and then more of the eastern Catskills, northern Catskills, Mohawk Valley, Capital Region, and into the upper Hudson Valley, those areas experience higher rainfall amounts and more flooding. And then, of course, many of you probably recall Tropical Storm Irene that impacted in August 2011. Really, again, the flooding from Irene, hands down, was the highest impact. These are some pictures from flooding damage surveys that we conducted. And you can see here, Vermont, oh my gosh, Vermont, they really were very hard hit from Irene, washed out roads, landslides. And then looking closer to home in the Capital District, this is an area in Scotia. Jumping Jacks is a popular restaurant that many people enjoy during the summer months. And because it's right on the Mohawk River, it really, it got flooded. Very notable impacts from flooding on the Mohawk River. And again, something with tropical systems to note is we always look at, well, how wet are areas before these tropical systems impact a region? Because if an area is particularly wet, if things are already saturated and people really can't, or the ground really can't take any more rain, then a lot of that rain will run off and it will go into rivers, lead to flash flooding. So we always look at what's called antecedent conditions, meaning how wet are we going into an event. If we were in a drought, maybe we had weeks and weeks of hot weather and no rain, then the ground is dry and thirsty. And actually, so when these tropical systems impact, sometimes if it's, assuming nothing too treacherous, sometimes they can replenish reservoirs, replenish the ground soil and stream water, and it can be beneficial. So you always look at to see what are the conditions going into an event to see what a river or the ground can and cannot take. This graphic is an interesting look at verification. So many of you may be aware that NOAA, the National Weather Service, does produce a hurricane outlook, and it usually comes out right before Memorial Day each year. So this graph is looking at what was the prediction at the beginning of the season from the National Weather Service and what actually occurred. So going back to 2007 all the way to 2024, here's kind of how the verification lines up. So these blue graphs that you're seeing, the blue bars, that represents the number of named storms that were predicted. So when we say named storms, that's the number of cyclones that reach tropical storm or hurricane status. That's called a named storm. The yellow bar represents the prediction for the number of hurricanes. Now, in order to be a hurricane, you need to have the system, the tropical cyclone needs to have sustained winds 74 miles an hour or greater. So it needs to have winds 74 or greater. If it meets that threshold and there's a defined circulation, the National Hurricane Center will more likely than not categorize it as a hurricane. A tropical storm is a little lower than the hurricane status. And then the major hurricane, that is when a hurricane reached category 3 or greater status. So you might have heard Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricane. That's the Saffir-Simpson scale. And that's how we define the intensity of a hurricane. Traditionally, if you have a category 1 hurricane, that's the weakest. All the way up to 5 is the strongest. And you probably recall Hurricane Katrina. That is a notorious category 5 hurricane. So that's kind of the scale. So the red bars represent the number of major hurricanes, so Category 3 and stronger hurricanes that was predicted to occur at the beginning of the season. So you can kind of see how things line up and then what the prediction was throughout the various years. Now these stars represent what actually happened. So the goal is that we want to have these stars located within the actual bin that they're predicted for, because that represents like a hit. If the star falls on above or below these little bars, then that represents a season that there was a miss. So for example, in 2007, while the number of named storms, what verified, matches with what was predicted, the number of hurricanes and major hurricanes actually was a little short of what was predicted. Not as many hurricanes and not as many major hurricanes actually occurred compared to what was predicted at the beginning of the season. So that kind of shows you, if you take a look at this through the years, it was generally the predictions were on par. It wasn't that we predicted, that the stars and the bars were not terribly far apart. They were in the ballpark, if not right within the bars themselves. So this graphic is representing that there is merit, and a lot of the forecasts do verify within reason. Now we're going to get into how you can report storm damage that you might be experiencing or witnessing to the National Weather Service. So if you ever experience or see damaging winds, maybe you've witnessed trees that fell or wires that fell as a result of severe weather, we want to make sure that you know how you, as our SKYWARN trained spotters, can communicate that information to us at the National Weather Service. You guys are our eyes and ears on the ground. We are forecasters sitting in an office, and we really don't have as much data, ground truth data. What that means is we don't have as many eyes and ears on the ground as we would like. And that's why we rely on you guys, the SKYWARN spotters, to give us that information. So if a storm comes through your region and you are experiencing damaging winds and a lot of trees are falling, what have you, when it is safe, we are asking that you can reach out to us and let us know what it is that you experienced. And as always, pictures are the best way to communicate what you're witnessing. And on the flip side is also true. If, say, a flash flood warning was issued for your area, but you really didn't get much flooding, not really much happened, that's just as valuable information as if there's flooding occurring and you want to tell us about flooding. So both sides of the coin are very valuable information. If something went through your area and it was like no big deal, that's really great information for us, so we know to hold off on warnings or maybe cancel or downgrade any other products we might have out, whether we have advisories or other warnings out. If you're calling us saying, hey, I know you guys had this severe thunderstorm warning, the storm came through here, and you know what? It really wasn't that bad. That is very valuable information, and if you want to communicate that to us, it's very helpful. So here's how you can communicate to us. First, there's a phone number. Phone number here, 518-626-7569. You can put that in your cell phones, and that is a direct line to our operations. Please do not think that you ever are bothering us. I know some people think like, oh, I don't want to call you guys. I'm sure you're busy. I don't want to disturb you. You guys are our SKYWARN spotters. We will be on the phone with you. Normally it's like 1 to 2 minutes. It's quick. And we really appreciate your time and information. So if you do have something pressing that you would like to share with us, please don't think you're bothering us. We want to hear from you. You are SKYWARN trained spotters, and you can provide valuable information to us. If you would prefer, we also have an email address, alb.stormreport@noaa.gov. That is your go-to reference if you want to email us pictures, you want to send us a quick note. That is another great resource. We also have a website here, weather.gov/AOY/reportWX. That is a way for you to fill out a form online, and you can just type in what you're experiencing, and that will go directly to our accounts. Also, we're on social media. If you want to follow us on Facebook or X/Twitter, just look for us, NWS Albany, National Weather Service Albany. We are on both platforms, and believe me, we get a lot of information from social media, and we are looking at it all the time during severe weather operations. Also, we have MPing and amateur radio operators, so it's a great. We also have what's called Slack, but right now that Slack channel is really for emergency managers, not really open to the public just yet, but that is another resource that we have, but just not right now. It's only designed for SKYWARN spotters. So again, here's the form online that I mentioned. If you want to type something out real quick, it's a Google form, weather.gov/AOY/report WX, and you can click this submit a report icon, and then you can fill out the form. So you might be wondering, okay, if I do send you an email, what information do you exactly need? So first is, hi, I am a SKYWARN spotter. That is first thing that you want to tell us. That way we know your report has a validity to it because you have been trained by us on what you need to identify. Second piece of information is, what are you telling us? Are you telling us about flooding, large hail? Did you see maybe a funnel cloud, a wall cloud? Are you seeing damaging winds and down trees, wires, what have you? Does the lightning lead to multiple down trees? Whatever it is, tell us the what. Then the next is the best estimate of when you think the damage occurred. Then also where. When we say where, please give us the nearest road intersection if you can. That is the most useful information for us. If you just give us the name of the town, that can be a little challenging for us because then we normally like to actually get the nearest road intersection because that will help us verify warnings. And we need that granular information about nearest road intersection if possible. If you don't know the nearest road intersection, mile marker, any kind of landmark about where it is that you witnessed this, if you want to tell us it was near a certain restaurant, a gas station, what have you, and just try to give us some landmarks so we can figure out exactly where it was that you witnessed this damage. So again, when you send us a report, please say you're a SKYWARN spotter, what it is that you're reporting, when the damage occurred to the best of your knowledge. And if you don't know the time, that's okay. Just say, I wasn't sure at the time. That's quite all right. And then the where, as nearest road intersection that you can, that would be most helpful. So in terms of what to report, for the tree damage, if you can tell us, was it a snap tree, uprooted, branches? That if it was branches, what was the diameter of the branch? How many? All that information is very helpful. When it comes to hail, if you can let us know the hail comparison, was it a golf ball, ping pong? Usually those are what we're looking for. Please refrain from marbles because it's very subjective. So when you're giving us a hail, coin, you want to say it was nickel size, dime size, penny, quarter. That's very helpful, $50. Again, if you want to send us a picture with the golf ball, with the hailstone next to the ruler, that's good information too. And then for the tornado, if you think you saw a tornado, let us know. Did it actually reach the ground? Was it rotating? Do you think it was a wall cloud? Pictures, honestly, when it comes to tornado and what you think you see, a video or a picture is the most helpful. So when it comes to flooding, what we need, let us know, are there cars submerged in the water? Are cars, is the road impassable that the maybe local law enforcement actually have closed the roads down? That's what we're really looking for when it comes to flooding reports. If cars are submerged or they're somehow being impacted by the floodwaters, if you can let us know how high the water is on the car, is it up to the tires? Is it above the tires? Are they half submerged in the water? All that is great information. And also some of the points here that are listed. Any damage? Are the roads washed out? That's all good things to add as well. And then one other thing to note is that your data, these reports that you're sending us, also can help your local communities be available to actually receive funding from the state and even the federal government in terms of disaster declaration. So this information not only helps us verify warnings and make sure we can warn appropriately downstream communities or any other communities that might be experiencing severe weather, but that data gets archived. And if an area is particularly hard hit and they need to seek out funds from the state or even the federal government, that data, those reports of how bad the damage was, can justify why a certain area needs funding. So actually, it does go a long way with even helping communities receive the necessary funds to recover from any kind of natural disaster. And finally, I would like to advocate that if you do enjoy being a weather observer, please consider joining the COCOROS program. This is free. It is a nationwide program. All you have to do is get a rain gauge, and it's on their website, thecocoros.org. They have a affiliate. It's called Weather Your Way. that is the company that actually allows CoCoRaHS observers to purchase a rain gauge. The rain gauge is about $30 to $40. You buy the rain gauge, you establish it in your backyard or somewhere on your property that is free from trees and other obstructions that could potentially lead to less than reliable rainfall amounts. So again, it's kind of a clear open area. You set up the rain gauge, and then there's an app. There's a CoCoRaHS app, and then you can just report each day how much rain or precipitation that you're observing at your home. This is really great if you are a gardener, if you just enjoy the outdoors. We do ask that observers report normally in the morning, sometime between the hours of like 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. Ideally, it would be every day, but we understand there might be times that you can't do it. No problem. As frequently as you can. That is honestly, anytime you can report, we appreciate it. So CoCoRaHS is a great way for you to take observations from your own home, report them online, and then you can see this kind of map that we have here. You can see how your observation compares to neighbors nearby. And you can see how your area might be wetter or drier compared to others. And it's actually a really great way to keep track of monthly precipitation yearly. It's really a great way to just keep track of everything. And that information is so helpful for us. As I mentioned previously, when we're trying to analyze to see how wet an area is or how dry an area is when we're looking at antecedent conditions, CoCoRaHS data, I mean, that's a gold mine, and it's such a valuable resource for us to really, truly understand how wet, dry, what are the antecedent conditions of various locations, and really get that in-depth look. Because we know here in the Northeast, terrain is a big part of things. Valleys compared to complex terrain areas, that really gives us a good picture. These observations give us a nice picture of how terrain, valley, different topographical features, how they differ from each other. And this information is so helpful. You can see that we are missing observations in some of the more rural areas of the Adirondacks, the northern Catskills, Schoharie County, parts of the Upper Hudson Valley, Warren, Washington County. Those areas we do need observers. So if you do have any interest, this program is a great way. Also, if you have grandchildren or children or maybe young ones that you want to teach math, science to, this could be also a good thing for schools. So there's a lot of different ways that this data can be helpful. And we do encourage you to check out this website. They do offer free training online if you'd like to join. And it's really a great way to give back to the community. And with that, this concludes the section on tropical systems, how to report to the National Weather Service, and CoCoRaHS.